Anyway, oh, there is a Tony as well. Excellent. Emma, can I just ask you, are you recording?
Yes, okay. I can see it recording.
Brilliant. Welcome everybody. It's very good to be with you again for this, our fourth Lambeth food story. We've been running these food stories through most of the pandemic as a way of bringing people together, sharing stories about food growing. If you've missed the other ones, you can find them on our YouTube channel. So my name is Jamie and I am part of the team that is running Incredible Edible Lambeth. And we're very excited to have quite a few members talking about seed saving today, and also a couple of experts who are going to give us their view on it all. I am not going to say anything about why it is absolutely imperative that we save seed. I'm sure you all know it, but for the record, Seed the Untold Story is well worth watching if you've not yet seen it. And I think that will fill you in on how catastrophic the situation is. But we're not going to talk catastrophe tonight. We're going to talk celebration of seed saving across Lambeth. And I hope you sit back, enjoy it, and enjoy the different stories. I am conscious that a couple of the speakers are not yet with us, and I will message them whilst we're listening to the first of our members, and that is a short video from Fabrice, the fabulous Fabrice, I call him. Fabrice is the main grower at Myattsfield Park, and Marge, our co-director, went and talked to him last week about saving seed. So here we go. Okay, sound quality is not good for me. No, okay, Emma, I'm not hearing anything. Not sure about that. What's happened there?
I think what we can do is, if you all look in the chat, I've just posted a YouTube link to that video. I wonder if it's actually easiest for you to all navigate to your browser, just remember to mute yourself and watch the video, and then come back and just post in the chat when you're back. It might just help us navigate some of that tinny voice issue. Okay, if that's all right with everyone.
Let's do that now then. Thank you.
Great. See you all in a couple of minutes.
Okay, are we back? Yeah. Is that film over, Marge?
Yes.
Great. I was busy trying to let everybody in. So amazing, people coming in left, right, and centre. Question: is Sukant here? Not yet. I've just sent him a link as he was struggling to get in. So I'm wondering, David, if you would, sorry, I should say something about Fabrice's video. Marge, thank you for making the video, because I know it was challenging. And here is Sukant. And I thought that was quite fun, just to get a little snapshot of saving seed. And I'm sure Helena and Katie will have something to say about that later. Okay, Sukant, hello, here he is. I can see you. Would you like to put your mic on, Sukant, because you are next? You're muted. You're
Hello.
muted. Yeah, great, great.
We live? Should I start?
Yeah, go for it. We're all ears.
Great, thanks, Janie. Sorry for the slight delay and complication, but thank you for the invitation from yourselves at Incredible Edible Lambeth, and for all the other colleagues on the virtual panel. Now, I'm going to talk about seeds just for a few minutes, and I'd just like to contextualize where we're at, somewhat perhaps pushing against some manifestations of English sensibility. I think we just have to be a little bit honest where we are and where our communities are right now. We're in the midst of a pandemic, and the pandemic is having obviously a profoundly adverse effect on a lot of things that pertains to communities, and particularly my focus is on Black and working class communities. So obviously the pandemic is increasing mental health issues, it's exacerbating precarity in employment and rising unemployment, and it's rising child poverty, etc. And obviously this is all around issues of growing plants to eat, and the whole community the whole community involvement in the project of growing plants. So we're in a pandemic and it's having all of these effects. But obviously there's some countries in the world that aren't going to the degree of social and political problems that they are through the global pandemic. So that pertains to, we have a real problem in this country. Not only do we have a pandemic, but I would argue, and forgive me if those people think I'm being a little bit too blunt, I think we're in the midst of a pandemic in the context of a growing fascist state. And we have the start of a civil war, a racist civil war started by a racist president in the United States. He's threatening the start of a civil war on November the 7th. And we're not too far off the issue of that type of politics here. So when I think about seeds, I think about seeds and I think about what it takes for growing communities to secure a cohesiveness around their social interaction and developing that social contact, and then having the materials necessary in developing, growing for community, growing to meet food resilience, growing to meet challenges of mental health of children, of parents, grandparents, etc. And so it's actually, you know, seeds, you can I suppose when you approach the concept of seeds for growing in communities, you can either, it depends how you approach the issue. I mean, it depends how you approach the growing projects in general, really. Someone quipped on my Twitter on growing the community, you seem very political, you don't seem to be growing at all. Which is an interesting comment. And obviously some people have a consciousness and have a relationship to reality whereby perhaps these issues aren't as pressing as they are to other communities. So going through a very interesting last year of growing with different communities mostly in Lambeth and the challenges around that. So really securing seeds is really an important part of the general strategy of securing a viable growing project with a community. So the first challenge is a social one, that you have to source people in your community who are willing. You have to talk them through really why it's important to grow, because often people don't necessarily understand all the multifaceted positive aspects of growing. So to secure a community, to secure a social base of people, then to secure material to do that. And fundamentally, the material you really need to do that is soil. That's the most important thing. And just as important thing with that is seeds. And obviously you can have saplings and little sprouted little plants, but they all come from seed, obviously. So where do you source the seed from? And we know from permaculture, we know from ancient growing systems, and let me know when I've got a minute left. I perhaps got there already, but we know from ancient growing systems that nature provides everything for free. But then political interest privatizes that. So for me, it's ethically problematic that seeds are sold for money. Or they're sold for profit. When nature is giving everything for free, why are we bringing a financial nexus in the middle of it? So really it's about securing the soil, securing the seeds, and then securing a growing space, which is the politics of land. And we are in the first capitalist country and the first colonial country in the world. So the politics around land are very intense. They're very controlled and they're very oppressive. So I had 3 police contacts throughout this year in trying to grow plants on council estates with residents. So it's a very politicized issue. So the issues of racism, fighting the police, or just resisting police oppression, problems of housing, access to land, these are all very live and immediate problems when it comes to growing. I really like to commend the Myattsfield growing project in this regard. I think they are a really important, functional, positive model in terms of what's achievable. I still think that although the Myattsfield project is really, it's an incredible project, I still think we still need to empower small groups of communities themselves to take in hand propagation. So take in hand seed saving and seed swapping, take in hand having the soil, perhaps the polytunnels or whatever kind of propagation kind of structures that are necessary for doing that. So in summary, I think seeds are one component part, one fundamental component part that can meet a strategy that faces challenges of social growing to resist what we're all going through, the pulling us apart socially under lockdown issues and pandemic, the mental health issues, the nutritional issues, the negative impact it's having on our children and what's happening through the education system. So in the middle of all this, seeds are a beautiful, magical thing, because you give a seed to a child, and I've done this all through this year, and I do this in the schools in which I work as well. The seed is magic, and it's in stories as well. It's in children's stories as well. Give them the seed, let them see it sprout, let them nurture it as a community, let them protect that plant, let them produce more seeds from that plant to then start developing that propagation the next year, not only on their project, but to expand the project socially to other people. So really, seeds, and just to finish off, my nickname in my family is Uncle, which in our language in India means that which sprouts from a seed. So it's really, really important, seeds to different cultures around the world. And I think this is how I would like to frame and contextualize it. Thank you. Can't hear you, Janie. I think you're on mute, sorry.
Thank you, Sukant, thank you. Totally brilliant way to kick off this evening. Lots to think about and so well articulated. Really, thank you very much. I'm not quite sure how we follow that, because it was really said so much, and there's a rich, huge amount of things to consider there. But we are now going to ask David from the Clapham Bandstand Beds to tell us a little bit about his seed saving experiences. Thanks, David.
I'm not really sure how to follow either, really. Bandstand beds, it's very much about the social aspect of things. And people come to our garden basically because they want to get in touch with growing and the soil and just want to do food growing. And so that's kind of where we're coming from with it, really. We've never done a great deal of seed saving. We've done simple things like sunflowers and chives, and other really simple seed saving. And then last year, we actually invited Richard Galpin to come and do from London Freedom Seed Bank to do a seed saving workshop with us. And that's the picture you can see. So basically, he went through various ways of seed saving, particularly the fermentation with tomatoes. And it was very engaging for the people that were there. And all of them kind of took seeds away that they then wanted to save. Which we, each year at the garden, we normally do in sort of February, March, is seeds that we have or seeds that we buy or seeds that we can get donated. We have a seed sharing event. So what going on from the workshop with Richard, Liz, who's in the picture, had saved some Galena seeds, which she then brought back in February when we did the seed sharing, and actually sowed those seeds with other people. There's another picture I think you have there. So look, this is still the seed. So this is the seed sharing. And this is quite sad actually, because the woman you can see on the right hand side is Frida, who's in her 90s. And our garden was an absolute lifeline for her. She would come every single week to the garden. But of course, since COVID, hasn't actually been able to come because it's so dangerous for her. So this was the last time she was actually at the garden at a workshop. And Liz, who's on the right, in the right picture, you'll see Liz in the brown coat, is actually sowing the seeds that she saved from Richard. So she took these seeds home and got them to germinate, and then later brought the seedlings back, which we potted on, and we grew throughout the summer. And that from those, we now have seeds that we've saved, along with other seeds like Green Zebra and Gold Jubilee. For us, the whole ethos about seed saving, and perhaps you will shoot me down in flames, but we don't see it as a way of saving the world, but we see it as a way of people being in touch with life and feeling there is a feeling of hope and future. And so that's really where we're coming. This isn't going to be a very long speech, actually, because I'm not really politicizing seed saving. For us, it is about well-being, and it's about gardening, and it's about coming together and socializing. This is something we always did at the end of our gardening sessions. We'd always have something to eat. We'd use food from our garden. So people coming to the garden would see food going from the ground to the plate, and they were involved in that process. So in the same way, those small seeds have gone into actually creating what's in that pot that's being cooked. And that's really, it's about the cycle of life for us. And so saving the seed is about the cycle of life. And it's as simple as that, really. That's all I have to say.
And that is wonderful. Thank you, David. I just think it's so great to gather all these different thoughts on why it's so important. So thanks for that. So unfortunately, the next speaker is not on the call. So we are going to move to Helena. Helena is, I must just get her title right, co-director of London Freedom Seed Bank and regional coordinator for South East England at the Seed Sovereignty Programme. So she has agreed to tell us a little bit about her experiences. Thanks, Helena.
Great, thank you, Janie. And thanks also to David and Sukand. Yeah, I guess what excites me about seed, first of all, is that I think saving and exchanging open pollinated seed at seed swaps, in community gardens or on allotments or seed circles is a deeply empowering and fulfilling way to take ownership of food systems. So to foster a deeper connection with the natural world and natural processes, and to understand better what we're growing and putting into our bodies. And I think that's about becoming more self-reliant at the individual and community level. And to my mind, this is important because after a series of quite mad recent mega mergers, 70% of the global seed trade is dominated by just 3 corporations, which is insane. And And crucially, these seed corporations, well, I mean, they're agrochemical corporations, so they also produce pesticides and fertilizers and so on. And they produce hybrid or genetically modified seed, which means that it doesn't reproduce naturally and needs to be purchased year on year. Combined with intellectual property rights and quite unjust seed laws, which prohibit the saving and exchanging of seed, farmers are tied into these quite nuts chains of dependency, which means they're buying seed from fewer and fewer corporations each year. And seed saving is quite a powerful, albeit on an individual level quite small, but on a collective level quite big, counter to these really problematic trends. And I guess seed sovereignty is a term that maybe encapsulates these ideas a bit. And this is about reframing seed as a public good and a commons. So something, it argues that communities should be able to control their own seed stocks rather than the seed trade being dominated by a select few. And when we don't have to rely on large corporations for our food, we're much more able to provide for ourselves and each other at a community, local and regional level. I think we're then more able to funnel resources to where they are needed most and are more empowered to actually care for each other. And that for me is the basis of food sovereignty and also food justice. It's about challenging existing power structures in the dominant food system, which are kind of founded on exploitation, exploitation of the earth, of food and farm workers across the whole rest of the world, and leave so many people hungry. And it's quite a fragile system, which I think we've observed in the past few months in particular, is inadequate in meeting our needs. But saving seed, is quite a powerful counter to that. The London Freedom Seed Bank, as I think a few of you gathered here know about because you're part of it, is a network of London-based food growers and gardeners dedicated to saving, storing and sharing open pollinated seed. And we work, I guess, on 4 main points in particular, which is about raising awareness of the importance of seed and the politics of the global seed trade. It's about reskilling folks in being able to save their own seed, preserving seed, so we're building a living seed bank, and sharing and distributing seed at community events across the city. And I see Emma's just popped our website in the chat. Nice, thank you. So I guess we have about around 20 to 30 varieties in our collection at a given time, though this changes a bit year on year, and rely on a brilliant network of maybe 15 to 20 growers across the city who produce seed for us and donate at the beginning of each year. And if anyone is interested in getting involved with the network, I'll pop our email in the chat shortly, so please get in touch. And I guess with a slightly more regional hat on, at the Seed Sovereignty Programme, we work on a national level to support the development of an ecologically sustainable and biodiverse seed system across the UK and Ireland, with the main aim of just increasing the amount of agroecological open pollinated seed produced here. Just a quick clarification in case needed. Open pollinated seed is seed which reproduces naturally, so it can be saved year on year. And so we work closely with farmers and seed producers and community groups to train people up in seed production at both the community and the commercial level. And I think it's interesting, I really resonate with a lot of what Sukan said about the pandemic and the corresponding lockdown. I also think that it has really shown the importance, or has kind of thrust into public consciousness, the importance of seed and saving seed, as I think quite rarely before in recent history. It's made clear the fragility of the dominant food system, which serves a few to the detriment of many, in particular already disadvantaged communities. But it's also pushed people out onto their balconies and into back gardens and allotments and community growing plots to grow food, many for the first time ever. And seed companies and community seed banks such as ours were inundated with demand. As I think Richard Galpin can confirm, we distributed all surplus seeds within the first few weeks of lockdown, and small seed companies experienced quite mad demand. One told me that he had a 600% increase in week-on-week demand compared with last year. And whilst this puts quite mad pressure on quite a small sector, it also is a sign of hope, I think, that people are interested in this stuff at the moment, and is an opportunity for us all here to really shout about the importance of seed, particularly in the context of building more just and resilient food systems. So I think I will leave it there. I'll pop our Freedom Seed Bank email in the chat, and please get in touch if you're interested in getting involved.
Thanks so much, Elena. Really good overview of what you're up to. Find out more. I was very lucky enough to join the London Freedom Seed Bank training session about 2 years ago, and I learned a huge amount about that. In fact, that's where I met Patrick, I think, who's speaking later. So yeah, get involved with the London Freedom Seed Bank. They're amazing people. We are next going to hear from Katie, who is a postdoc, is that always the right term? I never quite know if it's the right term, at Cambridge University. And she's doing research, it's entitled Reproducing Bio, in brackets. That's important, right?
Yes.
Biodiversity, alternative seed economies in the UK. So Katie, over to you.
Thank you. Hi everyone, and thanks very much for inviting me, Janie. And it's been great to hear the talk so far. This is going to be a great event, I can tell, already is. So yeah, as Janie said, I'm a researcher at Cambridge University, and I'm doing a project at the moment on seed saving in London. And obviously I will talk about some of the challenges of doing research at the moment, which should be obvious, but the idea anyway when I started last year was to just talk to people in London about why they save seeds and why it's important to them, which is quite a simple question, but points to the variety of reasons why people do it, which I'm sure you all have your own ideas about, and the way that those can overlap. So it might be ideas about heritage, so in terms of people's own sort of family backgrounds, childhoods, that sort of thing, but also as in heritage varieties of seeds and conserving particular varieties. It might be about saving money, it might be about having access to particular foods that are difficult to find or which you really just like the flavour of and want to grow yourself. And then there's also many more overtly political reasons as well that Helena's just touched on, and actually that sort of speaks to one of the things that I find really interesting, and that is we've already touched on, which is how seeds and seed saving and some of the activism and discussion around seed saving really speaks to this question of what kind of action and activities get counted as political and what gets counted as activism, and who counts themselves as an activist or as political and who doesn't, and what that might say more broadly, which I think was perfectly summed up by what David and Sukant said. So thank you for anticipating that already. But I'm also interested in just how seeds seem to come with stories, which again is obviously the theme of this evening, and something that I've observed quite a lot in the discussions I've had with people so far. And then another really key interest, as suggested by the title, and sorry about the annoying brackets around bio, but you know, that's something that academics do, so I have to kind of walk the walk sometimes, is the relationship between how people think about diversity and biodiversity, and what kinds of values and philosophies and politics that people bring to seed saving in relation to ideas about diversity, however you want to take that. So as I mentioned, it has been a bit challenging doing this research in the last few months or so, obviously because of the lockdown. This is the irony, you know, I'm doing research in the city that I live in, and yet I can't really go out and speak to people. And I'm actually, well, not just me, but everyone in my department is banned from doing in-person research at the moment for obvious reasons. Also, at the beginning of this, when, I mean, as Sukant said, obviously this is still having enormous effects on people's physical and mental health. And I suppose at the beginning it was difficult to, just thinking about myself, it's difficult to think about anything other than the pandemic, although of course it is obviously related to food systems and so on. So I sort of put the research a bit on hold, probably also for my own mental health as well to some extent. But it's really great to be here to kind of get to know a bit more what people are doing. I've also found during the lockdown, like a lot of people, and as Helena mentioned too, that gardening was an important thing to do. I have an allotment and no actual garden, so especially when there was no childcare provision, we spent a lot of time there with my daughter. And again, yeah, I've also witnessed the relationship between children and the magic of seeds. And I have some props that I want to show you in a moment, crop props. And I should have actually also brought the little, sadly, plastic cup of cress that she's been growing at nursery since she's been back there, which she's very excited about. But yeah, in my allotment we grow everything from open pollinated, saved seed, either saved ourselves or acquired at seed swaps. And this year I've also been growing out some seeds for London Freedom Seed Bank. So I have my Galena tomatoes, which someone's already mentioned. There's a few hundred seeds in there. I have some Q Blue French beans, just straight out of the freezer actually, because thanks to Patrick's timely intervention about preventing bean weevils. And then I also have some other things that I've saved. So this is just very pretty and seasonal. Some carnival squash, and these are the seeds. Sadly, I don't have enough to give back to the bank, or I might do, we'll see. And then another thing that I wanted to just mention is I want my research to be as sort of engaged with the communities that I, you know, are kind enough to contribute to my research as possible. So I set up a seed sharing project of my own called Corn Utopia Seed Redistribution Project. And this is some of the corn that I have available. This is what I grew this year. This is just some of it actually. And just, you can see one of the reasons why I chose this particular crop, given my interest in diversity. And you know, the aesthetics as well, very nice. So yeah, just to go back to London Freedom Seed Bank as well, I also joined the steering group this year, which I was very happy to do, and that's been great. I mean, I've learned so much just about seed taping, because I'm very much an amateur and experimental one, probably too experimental. But it's also really taught me a lot about London, and I've lived in London for 20 years, so that's, you know, that's saying something. And I feel like every time I have a conversation with people in London about seeds, I'm learning a bit more about London, a bit more about the people who live here, and about the plants that are grown, and that's just really wonderful. And it's a real sort of positive of doing the research. And on that note, I'm always recruiting for people to participate in my research, so please do get in touch with me if you're interested. You don't have to, you know, commit to anything at this point. I've already interviewed some of you here today anyway. And also it's perhaps worth mentioning that something that Janie and I have been talking about doing is a short video with people's stories and experiences about saving seeds, which is obviously also slightly up in the air because of the current restrictions, but is something that we'd really like to hear your thoughts on, if you have any, and talk about going forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Would you like to share your email address in terms of people getting in touch? Okay, I will put that on the chat in a minute. Or you can. Yeah, you put it on the chat. I love the corn, by the way. It's beautiful. And there was an amazing guy who Patrick or Marge may remember, who saved corn as a political act. And he died. What was his name?
Is it Levi?
Isaiah Levy.
Yeah.
Say again his name?
Isaiah Levy.
Isaiah Levy. Yeah, and he was fantastic. He came to our seed swap. I'll do a quick plug for our seed swap, which is annually in February. And he had beautiful corn, like the corn that you've grown, Katie. Okay, fantastic. Patrick, over to you. Patrick is from Rosendale Estate and a very keen seed saver. Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. Yeah, I guess my journey was, it's great listening to everyone else, but I mean, my kind of journey to seed saving, it was much more linked into, got some pictures I will talk about in a bit, but it was actually much more to do with my own mental health and addiction issues and issues of having neurodiversity like dyspraxia. And so I needed to address that. And for me, addressing that was inherently spiritual. And for me, my spirituality is very much grounded in nature. So as someone that was an incredibly restless person and not able to sit still, getting an allotment became my form of mindfulness or meditation. And it's been amazing as you for me, as I've given myself to that process of being in nature, not really knowing what I'm doing, over the sort of 12, 14 years now that I've been kind of having allotments, the whole kind of thing started changing. And I got just naturally more curious about like enjoying seeing the whole life cycle of a plant. That was something that was really good. I was also no clue as to why when I was saving things and they were regrowing, they weren't growing out anything like they'd started with. And I think it was kind of that point, or just before that point, I stumbled on Real Seeds. And Real Seeds is a great seed company in Wales. And one of the things that I really liked about them is that they promoted seed saving. And in everything they're selling, they're encouraging you to save the seed. And so for me, I started doing that. And then I saw a posting about the course where I met you, Jamie, which was in January 2018, I think, when that started with the London Freedom Seed Bank. So from a person that had a very spiritual journey, it's become almost like, I find all the politics can be so overwhelming. So for me, my political action in lots of ways is to save seed and distribute it to others. I don't believe that this continual growth economic model is kind of sustainable. And the other thing I think that captured my interest really on with seeds was that I started noticing, obviously, once you grow your own, how different it tastes from what you buy in the shops. And then also I started to notice, actually, I might get this kale or that kale, but what I started to notice, like sometimes I was eating things and actually I was noticing that I felt much better. I felt different after eating it. And I think, so it kind of came across the whole issue of the whole dilution effect of the nutritional value of our food because of what's happening to our soils and what's happening to like the limited, like our heritage crops. When people are selecting only for certain commercial kind of qualities, I think we've lost a lot of like the nutritional benefit in plants. And so that kind of got also my interest in heritage kind of varieties and stuff. So, and it's been really delightful because I went and did that training with the London Freedom Seed Bank. Helena was one of the trainers, so was Richard and Charlotte Dove. And I, from Real Seeds, had got Galena tomatoes. And I saved Galena tomatoes and gave them to the seed bank. And so it's just fantastic to hear about someone Richard distributing them, and then here's Katie. She's grown out and redistributing to the bank, and they're a delicious tomato. Everyone should grow them. And so to me, that's the power. Like, here, all these people are growing and distributing like a seed, because a company at its basis encourages you to save seeds and distribute to others. So so that's a big part. So just my kind of pictures I've got, like this one, the one you can see, I learned micropore is a really good naming thing. And so one of my big issues was forgetting to name things. And it's really easy in the seed saving process to kind of like lose track of names. So I started using micropore, which is great because you just move it from the jar and then onto the drying thing. And this is a true black brandy wine, which I got exposed to this year by my neighbour, who got it from Baker Creek or Rare Seeds in the US. And they got it from a really famous American seed grower with a brilliant name of William Woys Weaver, and got a great book on heritage, heirloom vegetable garden. And what I love about this whole connection is that here's a variety that would have been quite lost. And if we go to the next photo, it's an absolute, I don't know how you go to the next, I think Emma's doing that, is she? Emma's, yeah. And that's what they look like. And they are the most earthy, sweet, kind of delicious tomatoes. So from the 3 plants I was given by my neighbour, I'll now kind of save these and distribute, and hopefully more of us will grow and enjoy this really delicious tomato. And, that's the thing I love about kind of seed saving and seed saving networks. Just the stories, the power that you have to make kind of changes, even though they're really small changes. So if we look at the next photo, this is interesting. I don't know how Katie's cube blues are, but these were all my cube blue seeds. So as you'll notice, something's gone on with these seeds that were donated. Because they're actually all from the same seed, and that's the different variety of colours. So there's been some kind of crossing kind of gone on. But still, I still think they're quite amazing. So not quite sure what I'll do with this, but one of the missions, I think, of the seed bank has been, is about trying to maintain that kind of diversity. So that's the importance of, I guess, learning how to sort of seed save so that you prevent crossing. So if we move to the next slide, this was what Katie actually mentioned earlier. What I learned along the way is that bean weevils get into beans, and they make these fantastic little holes and ruin your beans. So the solution to that is you just freeze them. And I got these seeds from the Irish Seed Savers, and I'd never had them before, and they're quite readily available commercially, but they're a delicious sweet broad bean. So that's another reason to go to all these events. You get fantastic kind of seeds that grow into plants that are just delicious. And finally, I think this is my last photo. Many people might know what this is. It's red soldier beetle, or more commonly called the hogweed bonking beetle. And this is the delight you get when you let plants go to seed. You kind of see an incredible biodiversity going on as pollinators and kind of enjoy the seed and all that kind of stuff. And I think this is just aptly named because this is on my lovage plant. So yeah, that's all from me, Jamie.
Fantastic. Love the last slide. Thanks, Patrick. I'm just overwhelmed actually by the diversity of conversations tonight. I just think it's brilliant. Everyone's brought something different, something fresh, and I think, well, I've learned a lot tonight, and I've really enjoyed hearing people's stories. I hope you have too. Are there any comments in the chat that we'd like to pick up on, or is there anybody here who has not said anything who would like to say anything? Now's your chance. Marge.
Just a quick one. Fabrice is growing a tomato that he doesn't need to water. He picked up some seeds or some tomatoes from another perfect seed person in the south of France, in Provence, where they could never water properly. And he's been growing tomato from a seed. And now Fabrice has got some in the greenhouse that he doesn't water. But if we can find a tomato that you can, you know, if you've got an allotment and you can't water every day, I mean, it's just perfect that there's people out there that are growing year on year a seed that then doesn't need any water, just maybe right at the beginning to get it started, and then away it goes. So, you know, there are people out there, and Fabrice is I thought Fabrice would have turned up tonight, but he's always too busy growing seeds. So, you know, to come on one of these things. Anyway, he's a mine of information as well.
Very good. Anybody else? Richard.
Can you hear me okay? I've had a few connection issues, but
Yeah, we can hear you.
great. Yeah, just a very quick reflection. People have probably heard me say this before, but for me, what I really like about seed saving is the fact that previously, when you're growing annuals, there's this kind of relentlessness to the fact that, you know, each year in winter, I mean, you get some seed catalogues and kind of pore over them. That can be enjoyable in a sort of like slightly illicit kind of way. But then the cycle starts again, you know, and every year you start from scratch. And when you start to save seed, you're kind of closing that loop. And it means at the end of the season, when everything's sort of looking tired, and, you know, actually it's the most exciting time because you end up with a handful of seed, which is kind of next year's crops. And not just, so it's not just then, you know, becoming part of that annual cycle, but a kind of much longer time frame, which is that, you know, the cultivated crops are thousands of years of our ancestors kind of saving the seed and developing that variety, just and it becoming cultivated by reinforcing the characteristics that make it do well. So yeah, somehow you're linked into this kind of very long time cycle. Yeah, that's it really. The other thing I'd like to say just very briefly is I've been working the last couple of weeks on a new website and a kind of database for the London Freedom Seed Bank, which is on Airtable, which is going to have a lot of images on it. And it's something, yeah, I'd really like, we'll put some stuff out about it soon, but would love to get people to engage with that because it's an attempt to sort of really help track, like Patrick was saying, that wonderful thing about, you know, a variety goes from one grower to the next, and then that grower to another. And in the past, we've never really been able to keep track of that. So this is a way that those kind of stories hopefully will be, you know, will be told.
Oh, I love that. So how do we access that, Richard?
Officially, we haven't. Well, do you know what? I'm going to put it in the chat now. It's not.
Okay, it's not there yet.
Quick, it's more kind of a question or comment. Someone mentioned, you know, the biggest resource being land and soil, and of course, probably the biggest landowner in Lambeth is Lambeth Council, and I guess in theory we've got some influence as Lambeth residents over how that's used, and sometimes it makes me weep to see some of the things that happen on, for instance, this council estate where I live, or indeed in the parks. I'm just wondering, that side of thing, influencing that, them as an owner, we've got no influence over private ownership, but what's the sort of, is there any, you know, game plan in that regard?
Would you like to know what IEL is trying to do? Would that be interesting? It's a bit of a digression from seed, but I mean, it's all related. We are very conscious of how poorly managed so much of the land is on the estates. It's managed for minimal work, isn't it, for the contractors? So overmown, over pruned, all of these things. So we're in the process of trying to create a template of engagement, is a bit of a pompous way of saying it, but essentially inviting residents from estates who are already engaged in wanting to change the way the land is used to work with the different elements of that housing estate. And Patrick is already involved in that, because Rosendale has done pretty well in working with all the different elements. So the housing officers, the contracted gardeners, all of this. So we're trying to work across 6 estates actually. Sukant is involved up in and we want to trial a different way of working. There is some hope in that the council are listening to us. They are supporting what we're trying to do. And the other big thing that's happening is all the contracted work is going in-house from next year. And we are hopeful that we can influence change there to manage the land for biodiversity and food growing, and for the community to take more ownership of the space and work, be involved with how the land is run. And I do think things are changing very fast. I had a meeting with someone from one of the biggest housing associations yesterday. She is really keen to change how the land is managed. But it has to come from the communities. The communities need to want it, otherwise it will never work. But the first thing is for the council to agree to allow change to happen, and that's the big one that we've got to work on.
Yeah, the other thing you need to say, Jenny, is we've stopped pesticides in Lambeth. You know, if we've done one thing, I think with IEL, it's to stop pesticides being sprayed everywhere.
Yeah, yeah. So we've ticked off pesticide. We're now trying to stop the ridiculous mowing regime, and we're trying to stop the ludicrous pruning regime. So we've just got to kind of tick them off and you know, recognise that we are beginning to, all of us collectively are beginning to shift this tanker, but we have to all work harder at shifting it faster, don't we? Anyway, look, it's now 6:56. Good timing. I was hoping that we would. Oh, Pauline, hello.
Hello. Could I just ask one quick question? In February, I came to the seed swap event and I got a little thing of seeds. I think it was from the London Seed Federation people, I'm not sure. Anyway, I put them in and they've grown beautifully. And these particular ones, now I don't know, can you see? Oh no, it's too bright. Let me turn it down. I don't know how to share things because I'm a technophobe, I'm afraid. Can you see those, anybody?
Yeah.
It's a kind of squash, a climbing squash, I think. They were black, crinkly, quite big seeds. Does anyone know what to do with them or what they are exactly?
So we have to ask Richard or Helena.
Anyone? No?
Sorry, I can't really see from that. But if
Yes.
Looks like a bean of some sort, right?
No, they're about 6 centimeters long.
It's like a notcher. It's got a really long name. It has these really bitter black seeds inside of it.
Yes.
And it has what's great about it, it has this great slightly cucumber, green peppery sort of flavour, which you can eat raw, or when they're bigger, you can actually treat them like a stuffed vegetable and grow it. And they've got a really long name, and I can't quite remember it. I've got it in my room somewhere, but Richard might remember, I don't know, but it was from the Freedom Seed Bank.
Okay.
And if you take
called?
It's a type of anocha.
Anocha.
Anocha. And the other thing is, if you just cut it, when you cut it open, if the seeds are nice and black inside, just take them out and dry them, and then just grow them again next year. They're really nice stir-fried or eaten raw or stuffed if they're really big.
So you take the seeds out to cook it?
Yeah, you do, because the seeds, they're quite bitter.
Oh,
and then you save the seed for next year.
Because I grew them at our school, and I've got dozens of them, and it's like, I don't know what to do with them. So I can give them out, and yeah, great.
Or you can save some more and send it to the London Freedom Seed Bank.
I could do that. All right.
That'd be great, Pauline.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Great. Thanks.
Fantastic. Eddie, did you want to say something else or not?
No, sorry.
No worries.
I put my hand up earlier, but no, I put it down now.
Okay, fabulous. I think we'll wrap up. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming and for contributing. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and we're looking forward to the next event, which we're thinking is going to be on soil. So important, as several people have raised today, the importance of soil. So keep an eye out for that, and yeah, have a nice evening. See you soon. Bye-bye.